Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and today we're taking a good look at the Elemental Shaman and giving you a basic overview of how to play this thing. I recommend you give it a try if you've got one, if you've got a Shaman that is, because it's a ton of fun. It's not a thinker. It's not a thinker. Gotta put that out there. It's not a thinker. So if you do like overly complex gameplay or something with a bit of depth, then maybe it's not quite for you. But certainly if you're having some jolly old fun and you want to see what all this chain lightning hype is about, yeah, it probably is for you. It's probably going to be something that tickles you pink. So enjoy it and generally just have fun with it, because it's a silly fun class, and it's one of those that, despite it not being overly complex, I tend not to get bored of. It seems to strike that balance really well, where some classes just have it really, really easy, and it gets boring, and you're like, oh, I just wish there was more going on. Elemental Shaman does carry a lot of procs, a lot of decisions to make, and things to track, and all that kind of stuff, without it being overly difficult, which kind of keeps the interest going. You've always got something to do. Great mobility. Through our Spirit Walker's Grace, our ability to cast on the move, which is... it's delicious. And also plenty of instant casts, which keep things interesting and allow us to make nice movements and solid positioning without losing too much damage, which is always a bonus in Warlords of Draenor. So, let's get into the super basics while I open my guild thing by pressing the wrong key. Elemental Shaman, what's it all about? Lava Burst! It's what it's all about. It's all about the Lava Burst. If we're killing a boss, we want to put that many Lava Bursts into him that he will be sore for a fucking week. Oh yes, we're going to pummel Lava Bursts in. Lava Burst, guarantee critical strike! But if your Flame Shock is on, Lava Burst will deal 50% additional damage. So Common Sense is already telling us we want to have our Flame Shock up 100% of the time. Yes, we do indeed. Flame Shock should be ticking and doing well. You should note here that Flame Shock takes advantage of Pandemic. What does that mean? You can refresh it early and you won't lose damage. So you can refresh it like below 9 seconds at any point in there, and you will just not lose any damage, which means you shouldn't really let it fall off unless you're doing other things like AoEing and it does happen to fall off or something like that. We have Lightning Bolt, as all Shamans do, which is our filler. Filler, bottom of the pile, last in the priority list. We also have Earthquake. Now, Earthquake is the thing that Blizzard was so desperate to make work. My God, did they put so much effort into making sure Earthquake was worth a piss, and you should take full advantage of that, because it is well worth fucking taking note of your Earthquake and taking full advantage of it. It is there to be used. We also have Thunderstorm, that classic spell that annoys every tank in the game unless you're good with it. And other than that, we have plenty of other spells that we can choose from, including our Ascendance, where we turn into a badass. One of the things that most people love about the Shaman is Ascendance, because you turn into a big pillar of death and have good fun with that. Let's talk about the talent so you guys can get a grasp on this. At level 15, it's very hard not to take Astral Shift, in my opinion. It's 40% less damage on demand when you want it, 1.5 minute cooldown. It's very cool. Very, very cool. Not to say there isn't something cool to be said for Nature's Guardian and Stone Bulwark Totem, but Astral Shift is generally where you're going to go. Level 30, pick whatever you want. Windwalk Totem does find some uses. Yes, it does. Windwalk Totem can be very cool. Lots of AoE slows going on in WoD. They seem quite big on their AoE slows. Lots of stampeding roars going on, and Windwalk Totem can do some effectiveness there. Level 45. Reducing cooldowns of totems, it's generally totemic projection that's going for. I suggest you get used to using this. I find a lot of Shamans, when they pick this up, pick a talent out of here and they just never bother with it. Terrible idea. Why? WoD or battle arenas where we fight the bosses are huge, absolutely huge, and we tend to be moving around a lot, a real lot. So if you just go ahead and drop your totem here, we can end up way over there pretty quickly. So get used to keybinding your totemic projection and sending it somewhere handy, like right in the middle, where it will always be effective. Yeah, it's a simple, quick press that will just do that little bit of extra damage. Really nice. At level 60, again, choice. Love choice. Absolutely adore it. You guys should too. Pick what you prefer. These are all very, 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 very close. Very close. The two I really think you should be thinking about are Elemental Mastery, because it's on demand, on use. When do you want it? I want it during my Ascendance. Doesn't always line up nicely. As you know, Ascendance is 3 minute cooldown. Elemental Mastery is 2. So it doesn't line up perfectly on the second one. On the next one, it's okay. But other than that, it's a wonderful, 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 wonderful spell. Absolutely great. Because you just get to do so much more while under the effects of other things. If you're good at tracking trinket procs, if you're good at taking advantage of potions and all that kind of stuff, you can see some nice Elemental Mastery bonuses. Echo of the Elements. Now, this always gets a good shout. You get 2 charges of Lava Burst and you get 2 charges of Earthquake. Double Earthquake is pretty creamy. It is. It's buttery smooth to drop 2 Earthquakes because that is a lot of damage. And also, there's a great advantage of having double Lava Burst charges. There is, because sometimes we will take something called Lava Surge. When our Flame Shock is ticking, we get Lava Surge, okay? Lava Surge means your Flame Shock damage over time has a chance to reset your Lava Burst. As I said at the beginning of the video, Lava Burst is the most important thing you're going to be looking after while killing a boss. So you'll be watching the cooldown on Lava Burst, like Lava Burst is almost ready. Got to get ready to cast my Lava Burst. And as you're about to press it, because it's about to come off cooldown, Lava Surge can proc, and you lose the charge because your Lava Burst will go on cooldown. And that sucks. If you have Echo of the Elements, that just doesn't happen because you have that freedom of the extra charge, which means you never, ever, ever lose procs. So something to bear in mind. Although having said that, it's rare that you will lose a charge of Lava Burst, right? You will lose the proc. It's very rare, but it can happen. But it's not a big deal. The big thing you're taking here is literally the extra Earthquake. If you're doing mad AoE, think about Chromog, where you have like loads of AoE going on. A lot of Shamans won't take it there on Mythic progression because the Warlocks tend to just do generally better, and Shamans are really good at bursting down things like pillars if you're doing Mythic, something like that. But being able to cover essentially like 50% of the room with Earthquake that's buffed and doing crazy damage, you will start seeing some pretty wild, crazy numbers coming out there. So they're pretty close. Just pick and choose whatever's best for you. Level 75, it's got to be said. The support healing from the Elemental Shaman is pretty crappy. It is. It's pretty crappy. It's not what we're good at. This entire like talent tier just feels wasted to me. So pick whatever you prefer. At level 90, they're all very close again, guys, which is something you should be happy about. Elemental Blast is pretty close. Primal Elementalist is pretty close. Generally, it can come down to how long the fight is. Yeah, Primal Elementalist, which buffs your Elemental Totems, which you'll be using, your Fire Ellie. If that lines up really nicely with the timer of Fire Ellie, which is 5 minutes, then you might get more DPS out of Primal Elementalist. Other than that, Unleashed Fury is generally the way to go. If you do take Unleashed Fury, you'll pretty much just be using it on cooldown unless you're AoEing, okay? So you want to just bear that in mind. It's very, very cool, but it only affects Lightning Bolt and Lava Burst, okay? So not your Chain Lightning. But Unleashed Fury is generally the way to go. At level 100, if you're doing constant AoE, something I will point out here, doesn't really happen in the game in a raid sense. It's not something that you will be doing a lot of. Liquid Magma is very, very cool. I love this spell. I think it's awesome. Ever since I played it in the alpha and just clicked this thing, I was like, this is so cool. So, so cool. Liquid Magma is great if you're doing loads of AoE. Absolutely spectacular spell. You will find some uses for it. You will find some uses for it. Storm Elemental Tome isn't anywhere near as bad as it was. It got buffed. So it's pretty cool if you like using more tomes. I happen to think this is the most boring of the three by a long way. Storm Elemental Totems and Elemental Totems in general, where you just fire them off and they go and do damage, are pretty boring. So that's something to bear in mind. But it's damage, not bad at all. Elemental Fusion gives you something to think about. We were talking about depth earlier. If you like having a little extra layer to your character, to your class, Elemental Fusion is the way to go. Your Lava Burst and Lava Lash increase the damage of your next shock by 40%. What does this affect? Earth Shock, not Fulmination. Okay, we'll talk about Fulmination in a moment. And it affects your Flame Shock. Okay? Very cool. Very, very cool. So what you want to be doing is using Elemental Fusion to apply Flame Shock and, of course, your Earth Shock, which means you'll be monitoring things like your Lava Burst procs. Yeah, and your Lava Burst casted. All that kind of stuff is what you want to be paying attention to. You absolutely want to be paying attention to that, okay? Also, bear in mind, Unleash Flame works well with this. Increases the damage dealt by your next fire spell by 40%. So you can do things like Unleash Elemental Fusion, which means you've got a double, you've got extra damage from this 80% from Elemental Fusion, and you've got Unleash Fury on there. Works out really nicely for some super powerful Flame Shocks. Really super powerful Flame Shocks. As you get more in depth with your Elemental Shaman and get more practice with it, you'll be very easily managing to do super powerful Flame Shocks and super powerful Earth Shocks via Elemental Fusion, which makes it a lot of fun. Something to be tracking on. Glyphs! You're going to be swapping Glyphs a lot. The one I want you to really get used to is Glyph of Spirit Walker's Focus. Spirit Walker's Grace, by its natural state, is on a really long cooldown, okay? And you generally don't need the full duration of it unbuffed, okay, without the glyph. You don't need to be moving around for like 14 seconds. You don't need to do that. You generally need to move a little bit for a short period of time. So with Glyph of Spirit Walker's Focus, you can actually use Spirit Walker's Grace far more regularly, and keep DPSing without much trouble, and it comes back off cooldown much quicker. It's such a must-have in my opinion. Such a must-have unless you're completely stationary throughout the fight. Something like the Butcher, then don't worry about it. But other than that, Glyph of Spirit Walker's Focus should find a nice home inside your Glyph book. Glyph of Chain Lightning, the one you'll be swapping out all the time. You will be. You'll be swapping this all the time. It adds 2 extra additional targets, so you get 5. Okay, but deals 10% less damage, which means on trash and things where you're going to be doing lots of AoE, generally with more than 3 targets, you'll want the Glyph of Chain Lightning because it's a solid DPS increase. If you're dealing with 3 Iron Maidens, you don't want this Glyph. You want to be Chain Lightning in every time you can cleave. So even if you have 2 targets, you'll be swapping Lightning Bolt out for Chain Lightning, but you don't want to have that Glyph. If you're doing something like Twin Ogron, 2 targets, then you don't want this Glyph, because those 2 targets are going to take 10% less damage, and they're not going to be jumping to other targets, okay? So something to bear in mind there. But there's also things like the Glyph of Fire Elemental Totem. Okay, if you have to do regular burst, generally you don't take this in a raid environment because you want your Fire Elemental Totem to go off and do its thing and have a good time, and then you're just back to Searing Totem and it doesn't bother you. But if you have regular burst coming up like every couple of minutes, Glyph of Fire Elemental Totem means you'll have your Fire Ellie for all of those occasions, which is nice, okay? That's something to bear in mind. What does the boss demand of me? Okay, there are plenty of good glyphs for the Elemental Shaman. Read through them and see what suits you at the time. Those are the ones I really want you to be aware of. And of course, special mention has to be given to the Glyph of Thunderstorm, which removes the knockback. If you're not confident in doing good knockbacks, take the Glyph. Please take the Glyph. That's all I ask of you. That's all I ask of you. Let's talk about rotations. Some things to be aware of. Let me just bring up my UI. So you'll see you need some sort of totem notification. Okay, you need to know whether your totem's down or not. You want your Searing Totem down 100% of the time, unless it's a Fire Elemental Totem, okay? But you can only have 1 of each up at a time. You also want to be tracking, and I'll bring this up by just firing off some Lightning Bolts very quickly, is your Fulmination stacks. Here we go. You can see it here. Your Lightning Shield stacks up as an Elemental Shaman, and once it gets to 20, it will go... Please cast Earthshock. There it is. You can see this going off. Please cast Earthshock. Now, you don't have to wait till 20 stacks to use it. Okay? You do not have to wait till 20 stacks to use it. In fact, waiting to 20 can be a DPS loss, because when it procs, when it actually shows you the notification, you might have wasted some charges. Over the course of a fight, that's a loss of DPS. What you want is a nice early notification, around about 16 stacks, unless you have the set bonuses, which you guys will be start picking up, which allows you to use it earlier. What you want is a nice early notification so you can start thinking about using it, and also bear in mind things like Elemental Fusion. Yay! So you want these early notifications just so you can be fully aware, okay? You can be fully aware of when it's going to pop up. That one. When it's going to pop up, and then you can just decide what you're going to do. You can see I have mine set to 15 stacks. So at 15 stacks, mine will appear and say, hey, it's time to think about casting Earthshock, okay? Have something like that ready and raring to go. Have a shock cooldown and also unleash and all these kind of things. Ascendance, Elemental Mastery, should you take it. But certainly a totem tracker. Very easy to forget about your totems while playing an Elemental Shaman. What is the rotation? Pretty easy. So unleash, flame shock on. Yeah, so you get the buff. Totem down. You should preferably be dropping a totem before the pull. If you've got Fire Ellie ready to go, drop that just before the pull and have that ready to go. Lava Burst. Yeah, want to get your Lava Burst on cooldown as much as humanly possible. Unleash. Use it whenever possible. Okay? Use it whenever possible. It'll give you nice buff Lava Burst, nice buff Flame Shocks, all that kind of good stuff. Very easy. In your filler time, Lightning Bolt is your worst spell, so you'll fill your time with Lightning Bolt. Also bear in mind, as you can see, I've got a nice totem tracker here, 30 seconds left on Searing Totem. If you do need to replace your Searing Totem, do it while you're in a period of casting Lightning Bolt, okay? And other than that, wait for your procs to stack up on here. Fire off your Earthshock. And that is essentially, at a basic level, your single target rotation. There are other things to consider, like using Unleashed Elemental Fusion with your Flame Shock. You can do things like, hey, I've just casted Earthshock. You don't need to do extra tracking on this thing. All you need to know is, hey, have I casted 2 Lava Bursts since the last time I casted a Shock? That's all you need to be aware of, really. And then you'll know you have your Elemental Fusion ready and raring to go. It's really as simple as that. Remember, you can refresh your Flame Shock with less than 9 seconds. So I just casted Earthshock. I've already casted 1 Lightning Bolt. 9-second refresh time generally means that with Lava Surges and natural cooldown of Lava Burst, you will be more than fine, okay, to keep up constant, super powerful Flame Shocks. Super powerful flame shocks. I will point out here, because it occasionally gets me, is that shock does have a 6-second cooldown. If you're about to target switch, bear in mind you're going to need to apply a flame shock instantly when a new target arrives. Okay? If you have something where a new target's arriving, something along those lines, make sure your shock's not on cooldown. Just make sure of it. What about AoE? 2 targets. With 2 targets, you want to keep flame shock on both and just single target rotation one of them. When it's 3 targets, flame shock on one of them and keep up your single target rotation. The only change is that instead of lightning bolt, you cast chain lightning. This is with 2 targets and 3 targets, okay? So with 2 targets, flame shock on both. That will give you a couple of extra lava surge procs. When it gets to 3 targets, just flame shock on one and continue normal single target DPS. Just change lightning bolt for chain lightning. That's all you need to do. That's it. When it comes to 4 targets plus, you literally go to town with chain lightning. Now this is going to give you the enhanced chain lightning buff. When your chain lightning or lava beam strikes 3 or more targets, your next earthquake is instant and its damage is increased by 300%. 300%. Yes, give me that. You should never cast earthquake like this. No, bad, naughty shaman. Don't do that. As soon as you get the opportunity as an elemental shaman to chain lightning 3 or more targets, do it and earthquake the fuck out of them. Okay? Earthquake the shit out of those guys. So when you have 2 charges, like with Echo the Elements, you will literally go, and let's say we're AoE, chain lightning, which will give you the buff. Earthquake, chain lightning, get the buff again, another earthquake. And every time you're thinking about dropping an earthquake, make sure you chain lightning first. You want this enhanced chain lightning buff. You need this enhanced chain lightning buff. It is your god and savior. Your god and savior. When it comes to raid cooldowns, you're not really the best, unfortunately. Yes, you have Bloodlust, but so do a multitude of others. Your healing stream is about the weakest thing I've ever seen in the history of mankind. It's fucking awful. You're not great at it. What you are good at is things like dispelling, purging, interrupting. Great interrupt, really short cooldown, 12-second cooldown. You can get involved with interrupts. You can support the melee. You can do all those kind of things. All right. You have emergency saviors in terms of the Earth Elemental totem, which won't help you too much in raids, and it's not exactly a DPS cooldown. But just bear in mind, you have it there. Get used to your totems. The great thing about being a shaman is you have access to all these resources, like Tremor Totem or Breaking Fears and Capacitor Totem. You have access to grounding totems and all this kind of stuff, and Earth Binds and all this stuff. Make sure you're aware of it. You won't need to use it all the time. But when the opportunity does come up, be the guy who's like, I can do something about this. I can do something about this. And then you will start to become a really good shaman. Okay, so it sounds super basic. Let's jump into some gameplay and see all that in action. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Have fun with this thing. It's great. All right, bye-bye.